Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, close your eyes for a second. When you hear the word Viking, what pops into your head? Probably those savage raiders in horned helmets, right? Emerging from the freezing mist. Well, what if literally almost everything Hollywood taught us about these people was just dead wrong? Today, we're tearing down those myths to uncover the real, documented story of the Viking Age. It is a story packed with incredible engineering, global exploration, and a complex culture that, honestly, it's way more fascinating than any movie. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start by looking beyond that Viking myth, check out the revolutionary longship, map out their global network, step inside Norse culture, and then finally examine the end of an era. All right, part 1. Beyond the Viking myth, discovering the real Norse people. So imagine stepping into a bustling Norse settlement right at dawn. We really have to ask ourselves, who were the real Vikings? First things first, we can officially ditch those horned helmets. Historians completely agree they never actually wore them. No way. Instead of just seeing one-dimensional raiders, we need to look at what this famous word actually meant to the people living through the history. We don't just see warriors here. We see farmers tending to the rugged earth, craftsmen hammering iron over hot coals, and women intricately weaving textiles. Because it turns out, Viking wasn't an ethnicity. It wasn't a nationality you were just born into. Actually, it was essentially a job description. The word Viking described an activity or an expedition. Basically, you weren't a Viking, you went Viking. These communities were fundamentally made up of farmers, traders, and shipbuilders just as much as they were explorers. Moving right along to part 2, the revolutionary longship, engineering an era. You know, building these iconic longships was a highly sophisticated process. And get this, it was done entirely by hand. Master craftsmen would shape overlapping wooden planks, forge these heavy iron rivets to secure the hull, and then rig up complex sails. The result? An absolute engineering marvel. These ships were flexible enough to absorb those punishing North Atlantic waves, but shallow enough to literally glide hundreds of miles inland straight up European rivers. A real game changer. Okay, part 3, a global network, expansion and exchange. The sheer cinematic scale of this expansion is just mind-blowing. It all started in the 8th century with those sudden, pretty terrifying coastal raids in Britain. But by the 9th century, they were actively settling the Danelaw and Normandy. By the 10th, they had opened up massive trade routes to the Byzantine world. And then, in the 11th century, Leif Erikson was actually stepping onto the shores of North America. This really completely reframes our understanding of them, doesn't it? The Norse essentially operated like a massive international trade syndicate. They navigated the major rivers of Eastern Europe, exchanging silver and furs. They traded textiles and amber down in the Byzantine Empire, and moved foreign artifacts all across Western Europe. They weren't just fighters, they were sophisticated economic powerhouses. And beyond just trading, they were incredibly resilient community builders. They didn't just conquer places, they adapted to them. They farmed the fertile fields of Britain, bravely cultivated the super harsh volcanic landscapes of Iceland, and somehow, amazingly, survived on extremely isolated farms in Arctic Greenland, all while interacting with entirely new populations across some incredibly diverse environments. All right, let's zoom back in for part 4. Inside Norse culture, life beyond the longship. So when those ships were finally docked, life centered entirely around the longhouse. Just picture it, firelight dancing on heavy wooden walls, lighting up intricately carved tools. This was the absolute beating heart of the community. It's where multiple families ate together, shared epic stories, and forged unbreakable bonds. This tight-knit community structure, not just individual warrior strength, was the real secret to surviving those brutal Scandinavian winters. Now, when it comes to their beliefs, it's totally crucial that we separate the deeply atmospheric mythology, the symbolic tales of Odin, Thor, and sacred groves, from their documented historical reality. While their religion was definitely deeply held, their day-to-day societal structure relied heavily on grounded realities, things like agriculture and the daily physical fight for survival. And this grounded reality absolutely extended to the battlefield, entirely contradicting that whole wild berserker myth. Their warfare was incredibly disciplined. They utilized highly strategic formations, like tightly packed shield walls, relying on spears, axes, actual helmets, and heavy protective clothing. It was a highly organized, sophisticated military effort. Which brings us to part 5, the end of an era, the 11th century decline.
You see, the Viking Age didn't just end with a single, dramatic, movie-style battle. It was actually phased out by massive systemic evolution. We're talking shifting political powers, the rapid rise of centralized European governments, and widespread Christianization deeply altering their cultural fabric. The Norse world simply modernized. They transformed from decentralized raiding cultures into highly structured Scandinavian kingdoms. The old way of going Viking just naturally faded into history.
But man, what an incredible legacy they left behind. Their true story survives today, not through fantasy, but through an enduring archaeological footprint. We have excavated longships, towering stone runestones, and the physical remains of far-flung settlements. It paints a vivid picture of a deeply sophisticated people who sailed out and literally changed the globe. As the history page, Historon1 reminds us, there is always more real history to uncover right beyond the myths. Which leaves us with this final thought for today's explainer. If a decentralized group of farmers and traders could engineer ships that completely redrew the map of the world, what other incredible documented human achievements are currently just buried underneath our pop culture stereotypes? Keep questioning the narrative, and we'll see you next time.